How's everybody doing tonight? It's a Monday. Does anybody have the Mondays? I get the Mondays, but it was gorgeous where I live. So the high was 88 today, which was very nice. Yeah, definitely Monday. Mondays can be hard. Hard starting the week. I am ready for the school year to be over. That's what I'm ready for. Hi, Mandy. How are you? We're just hanging out, waiting for CJ Bloom and Harlow James to join us. Let's see if it's been a minute since I've done a live. And I feel like you have a work trip on Wednesday that you're dreading. You've never been on a plane before? I mean, that's exciting too, right? Maybe a little stressful. The more you fly, the easier it gets. But yeah, it's navigating an airport can be intimidating. Hey, Zach. Zach, you're about to graduate, right? You're really close to graduation. That's exciting. And there is CJ. Well, hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going.
It's going.
I had to scarf down my dinner real quick. This is like 5 o'clock for me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is for you. I know. I was trying to hurry and eat too. We had a late dinner tonight. There's CJ.
Difficulties. I'm so sorry.
Hi.
I feel like the TikTok experience is so challenging for me. Hold on. I gotta put my.
Sometimes it is.
There we go. I know. It's just me.
No,
There's.
we haven't,
I'm so sorry. Oh, can you see me?
especially if you haven't done it in a while. Like,
No, all we're seeing is your avatar.
I've done it twice.
There you go.
here you are.
Hi.
Hello.
Twice still makes me somewhat of a dodo. I'm mostly distracted. There's like prizes, there's pennies, there's like people giving me money, there's hearts. I don't understand any of it. And
I don't
mostly
either.
I just need to press the button. Also because, and I'm so sorry to totally jump in and take over the conversation. I have refused to get one of the larger iPhones. So my iPhone is one of the tiny ones. And it's, anyway, I'm a little bit of a disaster. Hi!
Hello.
See your beautiful faces.
I know. I was so excited to see you too. I've been looking forward to this for like the last month. Like ever since I got the audio files, I was like, oh my God. You like this book was just beyond like what I could have asked for, you know.
So great. Yeah, and just to let everybody know, we are celebrating the release of Not As Planned. It's book 4 in the Ladies Who Brunch series that Harlow wrote. The whole series has been fantastic, but I think this book, just story-wise, was my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. They're all interconnected standalones, but I mean the whole series is just great.
I mean, we just said right off the bat because Tiffany's so great at like reaching out and giving me messages and encouragement and all that sort of wonderful stuff. And she was like, I don't know that I've ever read a story that encapsulated motherhood in a romance more than this one. And I was like, oh my God, me too. From the very first scene, I was like, I have leaked. I have soaked through everything. I am so there for all of it. And like the brilliance of it's like simultaneously you're a tiny bit ashamed, but you're also like, I'm a mom, my body isn't really mine anymore. And then also like, well, what am I gonna do? So I'm just gonna walk around with like milk stains everywhere. Like, what am I gonna do? I have a baby. My body is doing its own thing and I am just along for the ride. And I was like, oh, I got to buckle up because this book is like an entirely different experience for me to be able to tap into. So you had me from there. I was like, this is it. And then the only other thing I want to just say really quickly is I absolutely do that thing where I'm simultaneously exhausted and want nothing to do with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And yet a half an hour after she goes to bed, I am looking at pictures of her
Yep.
and missing her and wondering why I didn't take 5,000 photographs that day.
And I love when you delivered that line where she says that. She's like, that's some fucked up shit, isn't it?
I loved it. I mean, that's why I made a video about it.
It came from truth.
Yes.
Complete and utter truth.
Yes.
1,000%. You heard it. You felt it. You knew it.
Yes.
Amazing.
So, well, thank you. I'm glad. I mean, I think that's like one of the biggest compliments with this book particularly, but the entire series is just like the messages and reactions that I get from readers about how they connect with each one of these women in a different way. But with Noelle's book, particularly with motherhood, you know, I didn't want it to be all sunshine and roses, you know, because you have this woman who made the choice to have a kid on her own.
Yeah.
And then she, you know, thinks that that's going to make everything perfect. And she still is, you know, deep in parenthood where she does not have control, you know, it's like, and that whole philosophy that, you know, we think that we can plan for things. And then when you throw a kid in the mix, you have no control anymore, like whatsoever. That was probably the biggest, like, eye-opening thing for me. When I became a mom, because I am a perfectionist and I'm very type A, you know, and I wanted to have that control. Like, okay, well, it's 2:00. You need to go down for a nap.
Oh yeah.
Screw you. Like we are not.
It's not 2:00 on my watch.
Oh, I did that. I did that too, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So that reality of, and the fact that like, we don't talk about it as much, you know, I think we talk about it more now.
I have to stop you because I have to give you the biggest comment before you change subjects, because I just have to say that the thing that I appreciated so much about this title is that it was without shame. Like, women who choose to have a baby with a partner, without a partner, however they choose to get pregnant, they chose to be a mom. And there is so much shame surrounding it. Like, well, you wanted it, so you know, you should never be able to go out at night ever again. You should be able to devote 24/7 to your child. You don't need daycare. You don't need, and I feel like I get that shame, and I'm married and we have jobs and like we can afford to send her to daycare. Like there's still some sort of sense like your life as a human should end to be devoted to your child. And there is an element of that for sure. There are things that we sacrifice and give up, but without shame to realize like she wants to find love too. Like that is also part of her story and part of her child's story. And I just appreciated so much that that wasn't like a conflict point, that it could so easily could have been like a cliche conflict point in the story to have been that, as like people could have shamed her. And instead everybody was like, you know, we'll babysit or we'll do whatever, or like, we're here to help you and we all love you and we all love your baby. And, you know, I just appreciated that so much because moms have it hard.
Yeah. No, it is the hardest thing that like, when you take it seriously, you know what I mean? Like, but with like shaping a human is like one of the craziest responsibilities that like you could ever like volunteer for. Like you volunteered for that, you know, like you volunteered for the pain and the stretch marks and everything. And then this pure person comes out and it doesn't just last until you're, you know, they're 18. I mean, I'm 36 and I still need my mom, you know, like I still call her, I still, you know, ask her for advice. And so, yeah, it's just, it's wild. It's wild. And I appreciate that. I didn't want there to be shame around it either because I have experienced that myself. You know, I'm a working mother, and even with my writing, you know, there was like opinions about, well, like, when do you do that? Like, when do you spend time with your kids, you know, and da, 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 da. And it's like, I'm allowed to have stuff for me too, you know, like I'm allowed to spend time away from my kids. Like my kids are going to be fine. Isn't the idea like eventually that they're going to be their own individual people and go off and live their own lives, you know, like, I need to have something for me too. But it took me a very long time to learn that, like I didn't learn that right off the bat. And when they're little, the days bleed together and they feel so long, and you feel like you're doing everything wrong all at the same time. And so her support system was really important, and to show moms that it's okay to ask for help, like
Yes.
even the scene where Penelope takes the baby from her and then the food all comes, and Noelle's like, here, I'll take the baby back. And she's like, no, you eat. Like just even something simple like that. Cause I remember like being in a restaurant, I was the last one to eat, or like sitting down at the table and I was the last one to eat because, it's so.
It's every night in my house.
Yeah. How old is your daughter?
She's 4.5.
Okay. Yeah. You're still in the thick of it.
I'm in the thick of it.
Yeah. Mine are 9 and my son just turned 9 on the 2nd and my daughter turns 12 on Wednesday. So yeah, so we're at different phases and different challenges with that, but the independence, when they become a little bit more independent, it's so much nicer. Oh my God.
So nice.
It's like, you can wipe your own ass now. Congratulations. Go take care of it.
Turn the television on by yourself. Yay, go do that when you wake up early.
Yes.
I have the problem where my daughter can do those things and chooses not to do those things.
Yep, and then you have that.
Then you have that.
But then they become teenagers. I'm not looking for
No, it's that same, once again, bittersweet combination of simultaneous full spectrum of emotions where you are like a little annoyed, like in the morning, just turn the television on, just give mom like an hour more sleep. And then when that goes away, you're like, oh, I just wish that they would wake me up in the morning. We can't, you want all of the sides all at once, just
I tell my daughter,
on the day when you need more sleep.
Well, I tell my daughter, who's 12, there's times where she's like, oh my God, leave me alone. I'm like, there were days where you wanted to watch me poop, like really? And now you don't want anything to do with me.
Now is where you're putting your foot down? Yes.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. But yeah, I wanted it to be real and raw, and I think when I was writing it, I was going through a really rough time too, just motherhood wise. There was a lot of stuff going on and my husband was having knee surgery and, like we had soccer season and my daughter was having, problems at school and my son was going through a weird phase with stuff. And so it was almost kind of cathartic for me to sit down and really like get some of those thoughts out, even though my kids aren't as young as, the baby is in the story. I can still remember being in, those moments and those phases and, being a working mom too adds an entirely different level of guilt and shame, things that you feel. And yeah, so it was, I get, like I said, a lot of messages about this book. Like, thank you. Like, I don't think I've ever read something where I feel more seen, like you were writing my thoughts down on paper and I'm like, cause those are my thoughts too.
Those are my thoughts. It's so interesting. Like I was just listening to a podcast about sort of like why globally the population is declining. Like, is it, and they were taking all different kinds of countries, like countries that had like crazy policies where the mom and the dad can take like a year off of work. And, like Sweden is sort of held up as like the standard for all the things that they give to new parents. And then also to like and they were sort of saying like, but none of that seems to matter because the birth rate has stayed the same between like whatever they're doing and whatever. And one of the things that they brought up, which I thought was so fascinating, is like culturally, how we choose to parent, the shame that is brought on parents. Like we want everybody to have families, but that there aren't, the culture hasn't sort of caught up to it. Like that shame aspect or like the person who was talking about, he was saying like, my kids wake up early. Nothing is open when they're early. If we lived in a society that, really embraced families, then there would be like a coffee shop that would be open to families from like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. when the normal people in the world wake up and they wouldn't like, conflict with each other. There would be a place for them to go. And it started me thinking so much about all of, it happened to narrate this title around the same time that I was listening to it. So I was like, oh my goodness, how serendipitous to have gotten sort of these like cultural conversations, and how even just like a generation ago, that shame and guilt about parenthood just didn't exist. People, like, I was thinking, like, my mom dropped me off at like random neighbors down the street. She was like, have a great time. I'll see you when I call out the door and say, like, it's time for dinner. And she didn't know what I was up to or doing all day, but she went about her own life. And I don't think that neighbor was like, you should be spending more time with your kids. So there's like a sort of, I'm not saying that version is correct or the version we have now is correct. I'm just saying that there are so culturally we're sort of in this like weird in between, right? Where like we're spending so much more time with our kids and it's so much more exhausting, and there's so much, you know, outside environmental criticisms, and yet not necessarily like a cultural conversation about how hard that really makes it on families to go through it, and then in particular in finding love and what that does to the man who is also particularly vulnerable in this story. And so anyway, it was such a full circle kind of moment to think about that kind of stuff for me, about sort of, which I love about this work, because love stories are everybody's stories, where how you find love. And so I just love when I can bring that into sort of my personal life, or sort of what I'm noticing is going on culturally, kind of thing. And anyway, I just thought that was particularly fascinating.
Well, it's kind of a lose-lose for women in our culture, right? Because men never get asked, well, when do you have time to spend with your kids?
Yeah.
You're a working dad. Nobody ever asks them that. So there's this weird situation that if you're just a stay-at-home mom, you're not really embraced by society as someone who's really contributing to society. But if you are full-time working, well, now you're neglecting your kids. Like, there's not a good way for women to win in that situation.
Yeah.
And then you just feel no matter what you do.
And I think that social media has magnified that, you know, because there's an opinion about everything, and there's, you know, always two sides to everything. And I think it's also magnified the pressure that we feel, you know, from all sides. One thing that I realized probably within the last couple of years is a lot of that pressure, though, is pressure that I put on myself. It's pressure that I put on myself, not necessarily that anybody has put on me, you know, but to do all the things and be all the things, you know, but then it was like, okay, but what about me too, you know? And there's a part in the book where I think it's Amelia says to Noelle, you know, like, you were a woman before you became a mother, and that person deserves not to be lost.
Yes.
And
I remember that. You're a different woman. Yeah. You're not the same person, but you are figuring out that combination of a person. And that takes a long time.
Very long time.
Figure out who that person is.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, men don't go through that, you know, like, men aren't being asked about that. Men are, you know, like, it's a female thing, like, you know, something that we deal with as moms. And I just, when I wrote that, I was like, it was kind of like an epiphany for me too, you know, like, don't forget about you. Like, don't forget. And we always talk, you know, we hear about self-care, you know, and like, and taking care of yourself. And it was like the moment where I gave myself permission to be selfish and to put me first in certain aspects. Because if I am not well taken care of, you know, and stuff, like,
the ship goes down.
I can't take care of everybody else, you know? We don't give each other enough grace between. Yeah, I know, I agree. And I think as women, we need to be more supportive of that, you know, like, we're all going through the same thing. We're all, you know, like, in that, this adventure of motherhood, you know, and figuring out who we are. And so I think if we keep having those conversations, then it lowers that pressure that we put on ourselves, and then we feel, you know, more at ease. I don't know. I think about generations beforehand where everything was about, the kids. And I'm like, yeah, I love my children. Don't get me wrong. Like I take a bullet for them, but like at the end of the day, I have to take care of me too. Like there's got to be a balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that just we miss that. But the idea of remembering who we were before we had kids. I mean, it took me. I have two kids. I have a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it took years. It really wasn't until they started to both be more independent where I felt like I had space to try to figure out who am I now? I'm not the person I was before my first daughter was born.
Yep.
I mean, the entire first year of her life, I kept thinking, like, okay, when are the real adults going to show up?
When am I can I tap out?
Yeah. I remember her being 13 months old, us sitting in an apartment in her bedroom, and it clicked with me like, this is my life now.
Yeah.
It took me 13 months for it to and I don't handle change very well. That's part of my personality and things I struggle with. But I still had, I had a community of people that were willing to help, and I had parents that were willing to help. So even just reading this book and, thinking about single moms who don't have help and don't have community, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
I really don't, because even the little bit of guilt that gets put on Noelle by her sister in the book, like it's you covered over it really fast, and you realize, well, there was a lot of jealousy.
Yeah, that's usually what it comes from. That's actually what I think most of everybody else is, constant shame and sort of, that's just their own projection. Somebody wrote earlier, grace, and that is a word I've been thinking so much about recently, just in general, of like one of those words that I remind myself about on a daily basis in my interactions with everyone, just to have some grace. It's hard to walk in somebody else's shoes, and also to have a little bit of like an emotional IQ to sort of take someone in for what they're going, and recognize that actually what they're throwing at me is so much more about what they're going through. And if I can just take a minute and, put up a little bit of a boundary and, recognize that it's not about me, it's actually about them. Maybe we can like button that up on their end, make them feel a little bit better, and then we can all move on.
That is an important lesson to learn, I think, as you get older, is to realize that people's reactions to you is a lot of times more about them than it is about you. But I think what was so important for that interaction between Noelle and her sister was, her sister was the one that thought that her, her life plan was so stupid, and like things were going to work out, the way they were and whatever. And then she ends up getting this life that Noelle really wanted, but it wasn't what she thought it was. And then you find out that she, is actually jealous. Like, sometimes I wonder if it would be easier if I were on my own. God, if I had $1 for every time a woman has ever said that, or thought that, because, married women don't necessarily have, just right there where the husband isn't involved, or is not a partner. I mean, I'm very, very grateful for my husband. My husband and I work really hard at our relationship, and we are a team, but it wasn't always like that. And so there's times where you do feel like you are literally by yourself and you can't talk to anybody, and no one understands what you're thinking and what you're going through, and it can be really lonely. And without a support system, I don't know how I would have gotten through it,
I would also just say to give the men a little bit of grace. They're not allowed the space to take on maternal roles with children. Like for a lot of men, it's like a learning curve. I don't think those instincts come naturally, particularly if they're not taught that.
Yeah.
And having such like a depth of emotional clarity or understanding, right? Little kids are all in, right? They're all emotion, all instinct, all the time. And like the level of patience and recognition to understand, like, that's what they're, processing. for somebody for their whole life that hasn't been allowed to live in that space, I could only imagine they're probably just like, anything I do is wrong and I just get yelled at and I'm part of the problem. So I'm just going to remove myself. And then the mom is like, you just removed yourself. And you're like, all you do is yell at me. And they're like, yes, but you just yell at me and I'm not helping. So I'm just going to step to the side and just be, worried about what's happening. I'll just, I don't know, go take a walk or just like remove, right? So I just feel like I remember like some argument I had with my husband, like so early on, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, he has no idea what I'm talking about. So I was like, okay, we got to start from the basics. Like,
Yeah. Well, and that can be exhausting too, because you're not only teaching a tiny human how to regulate their emotions, but then you have to teach a full-grown adult how to help a tiny human regulate their emotions when they don't even have experience doing that themselves.
Previous conversation of parents dropping kids off at random neighbors' houses so that no emotional understanding or anything nobody was teaching anybody. Like, we all survived, but like, we're turning the corner in like this. And that's why this generation, we're a lot more exhausted, because we're spending the time to get everybody up to the same level of emotional fluency. It's not easy.
Yeah.
No, I have a lot of empathy for families as they try to navigate all of this with, language that everybody feels comfortable with, and giving your little person, allowing them to have a voice, as opposed to, children are seen and not heard, right? That was like a phrase used often.
Yeah. I heard that many times growing up, which I'm sure that was something that my father heard.
Yeah.
I mean, my father is almost 70. And when he was growing up, he basically lived in a shack. He had 5 brothers and sisters and a mother and a father. But my grandfather did not even live in the house with the family. He had a separate little house on their property. So he was very removed from everything that happens in the life of the family and the noise and the chaos.
So his entire younger informative years on what the role of a man was in the family dynamic was actually to live in a separate home.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you come back from that to like reteach yourself. Like, that's a lifetime of reprogramming your brain to recognize the kind of relationship you could have with your children.
Right.
Like,
because his job was to go to work.
Yeah, of course.
Like, he was the provider. We hear this a lot generationally. Yeah. But like, he was not there emotionally for his wife, for his kids. That wasn't his role. And I realized that my father did the best that he knew.
Yeah.
How he was raised. And of course, as an adult now, I can look back and go, well, you really messed up. But that giving grace to someone, like he did the best. I really believe that. Like, I believe that he did the best with what he had at the time and the knowledge that he was given. And then as you learn better, you do better, right? And so there have been some times he has said, hey, Daddy really messed up some things. Like, I could have been better. I could have done better, and he recognizes that as he's gotten older. And, now my husband and I, we're in our 40s and we have kids. And I'm sure when our kids grow up, they're going to look at things and say, my parents
No, you're perfect. I don't know what you're talking about. That's absolutely false.
I'm afraid of that on the daily, like how I'm going to mess my kids up. Like, because
I do not. I will disagree. I do not have that fear. I have told my daughter we will follow her wherever she goes. I did not bring her into this world to have her live separate from me, and to have her have like a life. No, I am a daily part of her life for the rest of her life. I didn't do this for just fun. She doesn't get that.
So bringing that male topic, back to the book.
I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Yeah.
So I think that was part of the reason why, to me, it was so important for Grant to have an example of a single mom in his life. So like when he met Noelle, he knew
Yeah.
he saw her, like he saw
she
it.
needs some help right now. Totally.
Yes. Yeah. You know, and having like the example of his brother and his wife, you know, to look to, and, you know, learning about kids through them and seeing like the things that they struggled with, you know. And I mean, he even mentions like, you know, I remember when my sister-in-law was nursing, you know, and the things that she would go through and stuff like that.
He paid attention.
He
That's the thing.
did.
It wasn't just that. He loved them all so much that he paid attention and saw them, right? He had such an emotional literacy that he saw them. So that when he recognized it in a total stranger, well, yes, he was immediately attracted to, but he saw in a total stranger everything that she was. Like he was evolved enough to be able to see her.
Yeah.
And recognize exactly what was happening because he paid attention. That is such a beautiful idea for how I hope men can feel space to evolve into, and to not feel like that somehow diminishes masculinity, or, you know, that we can expand the role of masculinity, and that vulnerability and sensitivity actually make you stronger.
Yes.
With all those other things. We want all those other things too. We just
yes. If we have to be it all, they have to be it all, damn it.
But to give them like the freedom and space to be able to find what that means for them, and to, you know, open up, to be vulnerable in those areas where you can mess up and still just come back and like apologize and try to do better next time, you know?
He had his own vulnerability, you know, that he was dealing with. I love his storyline. I had been wanting to write that storyline for a while. I have a colleague who had a very similar experience. And so the more that I read, I was like, I've never seen this.
Which part had a male infertility? Which part? Okay. I just want to make sure we were talking about the same thing.
Yes. So,
I don't give too many spoilers.
Yes. So I didn't want to like, you know, completely spoil it, but if you've read the book, you know, his secret basically, you know, and, I had never seen that in a book before.
I had neither.
Romance.
I had neither.
You know? And so, I mean, maybe it was my own like selfish need. Like, okay, he has to be perfect in every other way, I guess.
But he's still perfect.
But he was still perfect. I know.
Yes,
I know.
because he worked through his emotional trauma.
He did.
And could still feel that not only is that something that doesn't define him, it's not the only thing that makes him who he is, but that he can still be emotionally available to love. Because I think that after having narrated hundreds, thousands, I'm at over 1,000 now, there is a consistency about that I find in the male POV, where it is somehow so challenging to be both of those things at the same time, to simultaneously be working through your personal trauma and also leave yourself emotionally available to admit your vulnerabilities, the things that you're scared about, and leave yourself open for love. And that is so challenging for everybody to do, but it truly is the only way to be successful as a partner. It's just so important. You handled it so beautifully.
Well, thank you. I know Beth, Kathy in Texas said there was no better male narrator to convey all that than Connor. I agree.
He was perfect for us.
Oh my God. I was blown away. So not only like is his voice just, there's not even a word for his voice, but when I heard his first chapter and I heard him like go through those emotions, you know, and I was like, oh my God, like he just nailed it. You know, he nailed it like for me. I'm honored that he read that role and brought that character to life, you know, like in the way that he did. Because I think he did it perfectly. I was blown away. I was blown away by both of you. Seriously, like when I was listening to it, I just couldn't put it down. Like I couldn't turn it off.
I couldn't either. I was up
I couldn't
like
turn it off.
in the morning, finishing it up one night. And I was laying there in the dark with tears from the epilogue, like tears.
Oh yeah, no, I was crying at the end too. The epilogue. The epilogue kills me. So, I mean, I cry when I write sometimes, you know, so I know that like, if I'm crying while I'm writing a scene, like this is going to convey some emotion, you know, in my readers, but hearing it was like, I was like ugly crying. My husband comes in, he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, you know, like listening to my own book, crying. But oh God, it was just, yeah, it was amazing. So
yeah, Betsy did too, crying through the whole epilogue. Yeah, I won't say what happens in the epilogue, but Carly, I told Harlow, I sent her a message, and I said, I'm so thankful that you ended it the way that you did, because that's a lot of people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt so real. Like, it felt so much more real, because, you know, you could have gone the other way with that situation.
Yeah.
I'm being very vague. And I'm just teasing this out so that you have
because people need to listen to the book.
And also, I'm a little stressed out. I'm like, oh my God, is she gonna say something that's gonna be like too much, or I shouldn't talk because I'll blow it. Okay, so go ahead.
Well, I like so for me, I feel like part of the reading experience is not knowing everything, you know, that's going to happen. Like, and so, you know, we get at this conversation about trigger warnings and content warnings, you know, and stuff. And I get it because there are topics that are sensitive for people, and I completely respect that. But this is one where there's like a couple little twists that I absolutely love. And I feel like if you talk about them, then it kind of like ruins the, you know, experience to the story. So no, I get it. Thank you for being vague. See, people want vagueness.
No, very vague. You gotta like entice a little bit.
You'll read it, and then you'll remember this, and then you'll reach out to us, and then we can talk about it.
Yes,
because then you'll know what we're talking about.
Message me after you listen to it, and you let me know if you think she made the right decision. How she
about the epilogue.
But also, we'll judge you.
I'm not trying to get all like close to the camera. I'm like, hey, I'm reading the comments right now.
But also, we'll judge you if you disagree.
Samantha,
I just want to make that very clear.
So Layla, you are so welcome. Hey, thank Tiffany for this series being in audio, because she's the one that pressured me to do it.
Thank you.
And Samantha, she was in the comments just a second ago. She was on your first book.
Yes. So I tell you what, like, the talent for this series is just unmatched. Like, I'm so beyond thrilled. Yeah. It just amazing. But I couldn't have cast people better. Like, I know, it was nuts. Like, it was so well done. I don't know. I'm grateful. Like, and I'm so glad that I did it, you know, like, it was really nerve-wracking and really scary because I had no experience. And that's why, like, Tiffany helped kind of guide me through everything. And now I'm like a professional. Like, I even made an error when I uploaded Never Say Never to Audible. I don't remember if I told you this. So back in December, I got the files for Never Say Never, which is the first book. Okay. And I was so excited, you know, and like, I did my listen through and I got it all because I had a pre-order up for that one. And so I got it all on there, and it said, like, you know, to submit the files for approval. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know that by doing that, then it made it live. So the audiobook went live like 3 weeks before. And
I saw it, and I thought,
freaking out.
Yeah. I don't think that's supposed to be there.
I don't think that's supposed to be live.
Whoopsies.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Yes, the whole series is on sale right now. So to celebrate the last book coming out, we did all of the ebooks on sale. So the first book is free, and then the other ones are 99 cents. So you can get the whole series for less than $5. And then all of the audiobooks are whisper synced. So if you buy the ebook, then you get the audio for the discount.
So fun story. I have not told you this, but I thought about it today when I saw that all the ebooks were on sale.
Okay.
This was at least a year and a half before we ever had a conversation last year. Back before audiobooks, when I would just go to Kindle Unlimited, just find books. Never Say Never was free. And I saw it and I thought, well, that looks like an interesting book. And it's free. And I downloaded it, and then I had it in my Kindle for the longest time, and then I finally, picked it up and
Got
read
around
it
to
right
it.
before you and I started talking about audio.
Mm-hmm.
So, you put a free book out there, you never know what's going to end up happening.
I know.
This whole
I know.
relationship, that's what you're
Right.
saying.
I
You're
mean,
saying this
wild.
experience right now would not have happened had you not done
Yep.
that sale.
Maybe
I
not.
can guarantee the third book, people, I mean, I didn't read the other two, and I don't even know the other narrators, except that you said Samantha Brentmore, who's obviously hugely talented.
Mhm.
But I can easily say for the third, I did the third.
You did the fourth.
Fourth.
I did the
You did the fourth. Okay.
just an FYI, they don't tell us any of that. Like, I don't always know like what order I'm in. Sometimes the
Mhm.
titles change. I don't know anything except for like name pronunciations or something that comes up that I should be aware of.
Yeah.
And then and so I'm always behind on everything. I'm so sorry. But I was just going to say I knew I was reading something special when I was narrating it. So
It is.
I'm so glad.
The other thing I really love about the whole series, I feel like a lot of rom-com series, and there's nothing wrong with this, but sometimes you have a series, and even though the stories are different, they all kind of follow a similar feel, right? Like they're all hockey. It's a hockey series with hockey teammates, and they're all just really funny, and that's what you're getting into. And I feel like with this series, there was a lot of variation in the tone of the stories. The first book is really hysterical, and then you've got different kind of banter, and then by book 3 I was like laughing and then crying and then laughing and then crying because it deals with grief and it's heavy. There's heaviness to it. And then this one was so relatable because of the motherhood thing. So I love that you were able to do that, because I think it just brings a lot of I don't know, like a freshness to a 4-book rom-com series, that you're getting something that's kind of different. Each book is different.
Well, thank you. When I set out and I got the idea for this series, I wanted it to be female driven. That was the whole concept behind it. Was you see all these series where, it's all about the brothers, or it's the, the guy best friends, or the single dads, or whatever. And I'm like, there's not a lot of series where the females are the main character, and so I loved Sex and the City, and I was like, okay, well, what if I kind of like take my own twist, but make these books about topics that women go through, And so, Never Say Never was about that societal pressure and that toxic parental relationship a lot of women can relate to, especially with our mothers, about the snide comments and not living up to expectations, and all of that stuff. And so there's even a really heavy theme throughout that book, but I think that one is, like you said, the most humorous of the series. But I think that humor balances those heavy topics so well, and that was one of the things I think I'm most proud of in the series, is that you did have those moments where you were like crying, but then the next moment you're laughing, and so, in book 2, you have Amelia, who just absolutely refuses to settle. She knows what she wants out of her life, and she's not willing to sacrifice that for a man, even though she loves him and she loves his kid, but she's like, I shouldn't have to sacrifice what I want to be with him. And I think women deal with that all the time, as a conflict. And then third is, that great love that we all have that doesn't work out in, for whatever reason. And every woman can tell you about, a relationship that shaped her and that, made an impact on her and, for whatever reason. And then obviously fourth was motherhood. I was like, I can't write a series about women without diving into motherhood, So there's humor in that too, because at some point you have to laugh, like at some point you're laughing as you're crying while you're a mom, but you have to have those moments. But I think that's what makes it so relatable and so unique. And this series, I'm super proud of it. I'm really, really, really proud of it. And I'm so grateful that it's getting like a second life right now, because of the audio release, and bringing in new readers. And I think that, it's every reader can see themselves in one of these women, if not more than one, you know, for various reasons. So I appreciate that. I really, really do. But I am proud. I'm proud. I did a good job on this. And the narration is just phenomenal. You know, like I'm reading back through it and listening to it, and I'm like, "Ooh, I wrote that. Ooh, that was a good line. Ooh, da, da, da," you know, like.
Oh my goodness, Tiffany, you posted something to like I don't remember which social media something, and you had my narration, and I was like, oh my god, that sounds really good. Oh my god, yes. It was like one line was like, it was like as if I was speaking it. It was it sort of felt like it was so your writing was so natural. Everything felt like it was falling the next day. And you posted, because to be honest, most posts have the male for obvious reasons, but this you had me, and I was like, oh, that sounds, oh my, yeah, I loved it. I was like, that was so good, and my narration sounded so good.
I think it was the monologue about motherhood. I think
it was the
that
motherhood one.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to that and I had to screen capture it immediately or screen record it because I said I can't not make sure everybody hears it. I felt like it summed up so much of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment, and I appreciate that. You know, it's hard because I think one of the most vulnerable things as a writer is, you know, your writing. Like it's a very vulnerable thing. And for a very long time, I read too. And I used to read a lot more before I started writing, but I would read these other books, and these writers, you know, they're just beautiful words and the way they would explain things, you know, and stuff. And then I'd like read my own writing. I'm like, oh my God, like my writing doesn't sound like that, you know, like, and it took me a really long time to be like secure in, this is my writing, this is my style. And it doesn't need to sound like anybody else. It needs to sound like me, you know, like it needs to sound authentic to me, because I think at the end of the day, writing is subjective, just like any story is. Mm-hmm. But if you can connect with the story and the characters, the writing is the last thing on the reader's mind. You know what I mean?
Completely.
Yeah.
And I would even say same for the audio. And in fact, something that I've noticed like as a trend in just, I would say like the authenticity of dialogue and how people kind of talk to each other has really evolved over storytelling over the past couple of years, so that you can get those moments where you're like, that's just what I would say. And I know that for authors who, you know, maybe hadn't thought about putting their work into audio, and then they hear it in audio, and all of a sudden that gets their, like another part of their brain sort of lit up in a creative way, that the next time they go down, you know, to like sit down to write, it informs the creative process in a new way as well. So it's almost like we're creating a new like artistic medium almost, you know, that kind of marries both of those, and yet they're having a dialogue. Because I can't tell you how many books, or certainly in like my career of narrating, like how many times you're like, people don't say that in great pieces of literature. People don't sound like that. And you might be crafting the most beautiful sentence on the planet, and maybe that's okay for that work, but that's not how people sound. And so I think it's just so important to kind of keep all those things in mind. And then it just feels like it comes out of you. Like you didn't have to work at it. It just is there.
Yeah. I will say that, so I have my first simultaneous audio release coming in June.
Oh my goodness. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm super excited about it. But when I was writing it, I was working on it, I think right around the same time that I got the files for Never Say Never. Okay. And so I'm working on this book, and then I'm listening to my other book in audio. And then I was going back through my document, and I was like, ooh, okay, I want to tweak this. And I want to tweak this.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
Because as I'm listening to the book, hearing it and reading it is two different experiences, and it doesn't necessarily translate well to audio, you know, when something's written like that. So I write very dialogue heavy books, which I love. I like to read that, like I want the characters to tell me the story. And so I like hearing my writing kind of, like, what's the word, kind of validated a little bit for me, that I was like, okay, you know what? There is a finesse to my style because it is translating well to audio, And so, but even still, I tweaked a couple little things here and there, and Connor narrated that book too. So I'm really excited for that book. But it's weird. I was afraid that it was going to change my writing style, honestly. Like, I remember talking to a couple of my readers, and I was like, I wonder what hearing my books in audio is going to do to my writing.
Interesting.
Because I, like you said, like, hearing it is just different, so
it can only make it better.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's helping you to live in a separate space where you're comfortable with your narrative style. I will also say I've heard from like other writers that write in different mediums, like they go from screenwriting to plays to writing for television, for writing books. If they dabble in each of those, that each one of those mediums, not that I'm suggesting you do that, but like hearing your words in a different way helps you to realize it like whittles down your voice. So each time that happens, to help you like, dig into what your craft is and what your narrative voice is. And so that a lot of that extraneous stuff that sometimes authors, as they're figuring that out, feel like they need in there to, I don't know, do something, but it's not really servicing their work. It helps them, sort of like whittle down to what their narrative voice is. So I would imagine as you continue to hear your words and sort of hear it in different mediums, that it'll, continue to do that for you, so that you just get more and more specific as you go on. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, it has been, it's been a wild ride. Like I said, reliving it, especially because the longer that you do this, the more you forget what you write, because but it's just like when you read a bunch of books, you don't remember every single book and every single detail, and
understand. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, even though there's these fake people in my brain that I created, and like every once in a while they'll just pop in there, and like start saying stuff. But Samantha asked a question earlier, and it kind of got buried.
Back to that. It's for Carter.
Okay. Yes.
So Samantha.
Go ahead.
Okay. It says, Carly, you said earlier that you knew that this was special when you were working on it. So what was it that stuck out?
Oh, I think maybe you joined. Great question, Samantha. I think you maybe joined a little bit. I knew from the very first scene, I think we can talk about it because it's literally the first scene. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Where the female heroine is in a coffee shop and going about her day. She's a new mom, and then happens to have a letdown, which is something that happens for moms. And she did have like nursing pads, but she soaked through them. And it was just a very real, authentic, but only something that a mom would really be able to write authentically, or at least, similar to his character, you have to pay attention to realize that that is a very real moment for what a mom might be going through. And it just was so humor. She didn't have shame about it. She was a little embarrassed, but she wasn't like, I'm never gonna, or upset, or
it wasn't like mortified. It was embarrassing.
Correct. Yeah, it was like embarrassing, and like, oh my God, like now what am I gonna do? Like, I don't have another shirt. Yep. Everybody's gonna be looking at my boobs the whole time.
Yep.
Very real emotion, but not in a negative way, like having shame about breastfeeding, or like it didn't go to any of those places that I feel like a cliched experience of that same scene could have. And it was done with such humor and so much lightness to move through the whole thing. And he comes to her rescue and gives her his shirt, but he doesn't feel creepy or like weird about it. And she's like, "What are you doing?" Like, and she also saw him like, you must have seen somebody else do this. So it just felt like it was a very real and authentic and a totally different meet cute than I had ever experienced before. And I knew from that very first scene that I was in for some writing that I hadn't experienced before. Yeah, it was very swoony.
I love their meet cute. Their meet cute is just like, I remember when I came up with that because I didn't know Noelle's story in the beginning of the series. I knew she was going to be the last book, and I didn't know that she was going to so I knew she was going to be a single mom in Amelia's book, because that's when she kind of realizes that she wants to have a baby like on her own. So the second book, and then the third book, you kind of get a little bit of a glimpse of like the timeline of everything happening. But I didn't know like who her hero was, or anything like that. And I was like, okay, I need them to meet in a way that was like completely unorthodox, but like something that a mom would understand, like
a normal day of going to get a coffee.
Yes.
A normal day to look through your nursing pads.
And when he gives her his shirt, I'm like, oh my God. And I love how
it's
she
literally
calls
like
him
giving you the shirt off your back. And also not
and I love how she
shaming her
calls
for
him
being a
Mr.
mom.
I'm too sexy for my shirt. Like that's literally like that's his nickname. Oh man, yeah. No,
and
he's
also
so
like
strong.
you also in that meet cute avoided so many what could have been potential landmines or like contrived conflicts of like, oh, she has a baby, she wasn't keeping it from me, or oh, like any of those kinds of things he already saw her for who she was, and it didn't matter. They just then had to work on themselves, which those are the kinds of, romance stories I love to narrate that are just about us working on ourselves to be able to be a good partner as opposed to, contrived conflicts.
Yeah. Well, I love that he includes the baby from the beginning too. Like even on their first date, it's not like, hey, can you get a babysitter kind of a thing, like
Swoon!
Let's take her and go do something,
Yeah, because it's not just her.
Because it's not just her. She's a package deal, and when he calls them his girls, and
I know. I loved Grant. I loved that he was a little older too, and I think that also really fit his character. Like, had he been 25, he probably would not have responded to some of the things the way he did.
He didn't have enough life that he'd lived.
Right. Like he's almost a 40-year-old man, and so he was mature, and he was emotionally mature, and
and ready to be in love.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he loves kids.
He was, and not
just kids to pass on to somebody else or to hire a babysitter or to work, but kids to be an active participant,
Yeah. Well, and the way that he showed up for her, in moments where she was struggling, and the fact that he listened to her, like we've touched on this, but really listening to her, even when she was in, her moments of like complaining, for lack of a better word, but for him, that was, okay, what is she really saying? And what is it that she needs? The cop car scene is one of my absolute favorite scenes.
I loved it.
In
that so book. Pissed off.
Right? I know.
So angry.
But that's like when she says, like, I don't know if I should karate chop you in the junk or straddle you in the back of this car. Like totally, you can totally understand in that moment, like wanting to do both.
So good.
Yeah. No, I'm just so happy that the whole series is like out in audio now and new people are discovering it. It just makes my author heart so happy.
I feel like a lot of your ALC listeners have been talking about this book a lot. I mean, they've talked about the entire series, but with it being the last book in the series, a lot of people have been talking about it.
Yeah, I'm getting a ton of feedback that certainly in like a longer, if I'm the last one or later, it doesn't always continue the hype, and then every once in a while, like that happens where one of those books just like catches for people in a way that the other ones don't. And so I'm definitely getting a lot of people reaching out and saying how much they loved it. So
yay, that makes me so
I me too.
I think that it's hard, as you get into a series. I know, like, as a reader, if there's a series that has 4 or more books, that's a commitment. Like, to myself, like, so if I'm seeing something about, book 4 and I haven't read books 1, 2, and 3, that's really hard for me to like jump on with. But I really feel like this series is very strong throughout, so there's not necessarily one. I mean, there's obviously aspects of every story that stand out more than others, but it's a very solid read through, it's a very solid investment. Like, you're invested in these women, you want to know their stories and you want to see them get their happily ever afters. And so, that's a huge compliment to me, is when, there's excitement building as the series goes on, like for that last book and stuff. So I'm glad that you've gotten good feedback on it. I have as well. My notifications have been insane today. Like, I try to keep up when I'm at work, but it's hard. I'm a teacher by day, so I don't know if you know that. I teach high school math during the day.
Oh my goodness.
And I write smutty books at night. So,
where's that book?
Yeah.
Well, due to my job, I try to avoid that.
Schmath at a Schmice school.
Well, actually, I did write a heroine who is a math teacher. It's in one of my very first series. And it's a teacher-teacher romance. So he's a teacher, he teaches history, and she teaches math. And
so
they have a one-night stand, and then she shows up at work the next day, and they run into each other, like literally, like she's running because there was crickets in her classroom, which is a true story, by the way. And then he hears her screaming, and they run into each other and collide, and they realize, like, they are, they know each other. And so, I've written that, but there's a lot of teachers in my books. It's like you write what you know. Like, there's, so somebody was in the comments a while ago was like, you should write a book about, divorce and stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't know that though. I mean, I can, but it's, I mean, hell, I didn't know anything about pilots either. So, you do, you research stuff, but yeah, so I've done that.
That was the first time that's happened. TikTok gave me a notification saying that unless you verify, your live will end in 1 minute. I guess so that people aren't just like doing something and not paying attention.
Oh.
It's like a puzzle piece, and that stresses me out. I'm like, what if I don't do well under pressure like that? But we're good. I fixed it. So.
Okay. Phew.
Yeah. You can totally go in the middle of the series too. And somebody made a comment how they went in blind with the third and then this one. I think they all stand alone pretty well. But you do get, crossovers and stuff and like little hints about the other girls' stories. So, but if you're still on there, the series is on sale this week. It's on ebook. First book is free. All the other ones are 99 cents. And then the audios are whisper synced, so you can get them and enjoy.
Yeah, and then the audiobooks, Carly, the other narrators. So book 1 is Teddy Hamilton, Samantha Brentmore. Book 2 is Emma Wilder and Nobi Perez. Book 3 is Aaron Mallon and Jacob Morgan. And then yours.
Oh my God, all stars.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I know. And I had never listened to audiobooks like before doing this. I had never, so I was going off of my readers. I was asking my readers, I was like, okay, who would you want or who do you enjoy listening to, and like, they didn't steer me wrong. And so then I went on, on Amazon and I'm like listening to samples and stuff. And I'm like, okay, Jacob would be Maddox, and but the casting was just like, it was just puzzle pieces just fitting together. It was crazy. It was so perfect. Like, I couldn't have asked for better. Yeah.
And now we've hooked you. And now you're in it.
I know. My husband is aware too. He's like, so, I mean, audio is an investment, like it's expensive. Like, let's just be frank about it. And so I remember approaching him with this, after I talked to Tiffany, and I was like, okay, I think that my gut is telling me to do this. And so I told him, it's all right. So this is what's going to cost. And he looked at me like,
what?
And I'm like, babe, this is an investment, okay, in my future career as a full-time romance author one day. That's the goal. So, you know, but I'm so pleased with it. Like I really feel like it was the right decision. I really, really do. It's paid off very well so far, so that's a good thing. But yes, but I think mostly too, I got messages all the time from readers. Do you have audiobooks? Do you have audiobooks? Do you have audiobooks? It's such a growing platform, you know, and a way that people are taking in, you know, their reading and stuff. And I get it. Like, you know, we're so busy. If I had, you know, a longer than 15-minute commute to work, I'd be writing, you know, listening to audiobooks, you know, all the time. So, I love the fact that I can offer it to readers, that new readers can discover me through that. I love supporting you guys, you know, like I know AI is a huge controversial thing in the narration, you know, world. And
I mean, it's sort of in all the arts. All art, it feels like it has the potential to lose the human factor for all of it, for the television we watch, for the paintings we see, for the houses that get designed. I mean, for everything. It can really, for the articles we read, it could really, you know, sort of take out all of that. So I think, and of course in narration, people are concerned. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think people still like the human connection. I think sometimes they just want something read to them, and sometimes they want something performed. And that's certainly how I think audiobooks have really evolved over time. They're, you know, when I started in this business 10 years ago, the full performance was not welcomed the way that it is now. People just, you know, sort of moved to that medium. So it's just very exciting. We'll see how it all works. But if people are asking for it, you got to give the people what they want.
Yeah. No, and it makes me really happy and very fortunate and very grateful, you know, and especially for a narrator, you know, to agree to narrate a book by somebody they've never heard of, you know, and I don't show my face on my social media because of my job, you know, and Harlow James is a pen name. So my teenage students can find all kinds of things on the interwebs. So I don't want them to find me.
They are sneaky like that.
I am coming up on 5 years of publishing and I have not been discovered yet. So
oh my goodness. Don't say it.
I know. Knock on wood. Knock on wood.
First one.
No, I think that you give them a challenge, they'll live up to it, won't they? But I just think it's you know, you have to do what you're passionate about, and then also, you know, where you choose to produce, how you listen to your listeners, how you reach out to influencers. You get sort of everybody giving you advice, and then you have to make a decision on your own. But ultimately, right, that's how you start to build up your brand in a new medium that you weren't familiar with. And as you said, you're not even an audiobook listener, really. So how would you even know how to sort of navigate that, you know?
Yeah. It was scary. There was a lot of questions, lots of questions. But now I'm like, okay, who else can I get? All right, let's, you know, I booked somebody for my new series coming out that I am like so stoked about. I'm so excited. And I mean, my whole lineup I have coming for this simultaneous series is just amazing. But I'm just honored. I'm honored, you know, like you guys have talent. I could never do what you do, you know, and just how, you know, you compliment like my writing and how that, you know, translates verbally. I am amazed by your guys' ability to bring life to a story. Like I didn't realize how different of an experience it was hearing my book, you know, versus
Tiffany, we brought another one.
Yep.
You did it.
It was insane. Like I have my cheeks hurt from smiling, you know, because like every time I listen to it and I talk about it, I'm just like blown away. I'm
so glad you're so happy with it.
I am. I'm so happy. And I'm glad that I listened to my gut in everything that I've done over the past 5 years. I've listened to my gut and it hasn't steered me wrong yet. And so that womanly intuition, we have it and it's there and it talks to us all the time. I'm a firm believer in that. And so with support, of course, I ventured into something this year that was like a really huge milestone, and I'm proud and I'm happy and grateful and all the emotions. So I appreciate both of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to chat about the book and stuff. It's been
Of course,
awesome.
I was so looking forward to doing this.
Same. So happy to do it, and happy to, add my fans and listeners to, hearing new authors and people that I get excited about. That's what we're all here for.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what's coming, the series that's coming out, a little bit about it? Are you allowed to? Yeah, or not?
Yes, I can. The people listening get the exclusive. Okay. So because I've been releasing all of these audiobooks, I've been able to get ahead on my new series. So I'm writing book 3 right now. 3. So book 1 and 2 are already done. So we are going to a new small town. So my Ladies Who Brunch is my rom-com series, but I also write small town with like a rom-com feel to it. And so this new town is called Carrington Cove, and it's a coastal town in North Carolina. And the heroine in the first book, her name is Willow. She is the best friend of a heroine that was in my last series. So she's introduced there, but you don't have to read the other series in order to enjoy this. So her name is Willow. She gets a letter one day. She owns a multi-million-dollar advertising business in Washington, D.C. So we have a female millionaire, which I don't think we see enough of. Okay.
Certainly not from her own, certainly not from her own career.
Yes. No, she builds this company from the ground up.
Amazing. I'm riveted. Keep going.
So she gets this letter from a man that she's never met who says that he knew her parents, and her parents died when she was really little. So her best friend convinces her to go and see, what it's about and stuff. So she ventures to this small town that she's never heard of, and she comes to find out she inherited a house. So this man left her a house, and when she's in the town, she goes into this bar and restaurant, and she interacts with this grumpy former Marine bar owner who chastises her about her manners. Okay. And so they get into this whole debacle. And so she ends up leaving. And then a couple days later, he shows up on her doorstep, and it turns out that he's always wanted to buy the house, but now she owns it. So you've got a fish out of water, enemies to lovers. They're both grumpy. I
love a grump.
Grumpy.
Yeah. And
I like grumpy.
he falls for her. So he falls first. But there's kind of like a surprise twist involved in the book that leads her to the town. So that's the first book, and I'm obsessed with it. I actually was writing that story, and I got halfway through it, and then I got the idea for Never Say Never, and I walked away from that book to write the Ladies Who Brunch series.
Wow.
Totally. I mean, it worked out, everything happens the way that it was supposed to. But then probably about, 6 months ago or so, that book kept coming up into my head. And so I went back to it, and I was working on it, and I was like, okay, nope, it's time to go back to this town. So I am completely immersed in this little town now. And yeah, so he has the most adorable nickname for her. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I love it. And so it's a family series. So there's going to be 5 books. So the hero is the oldest brother, and then there's 2 other brothers, and there's a sister. And then the middle is going to be like a side character. So he's the brother of one of the other characters. So you get like a 5-book series. So all simultaneous audio releases.
So when do these start coming out?
June.
Oh, it starts
June.
in June, this
Oh
June.
my goodness.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then the Newberry Springs series, my last small town series, is coming to audio on May 29th, and I'm releasing that one as a box set. So Angelina Rocca and Dane Anderson narrated all 3 of those books. And I'm listening to the first one right now. I'm halfway through the first one.
Oh, and you're doing it as a box set, so you get all 3 for one credit?
All 3, yes.
Wow.
Because they're a little bit shorter.
Okay.
And because the same narrators did all 3 books, I wanted it to be more of like an immersive experience. Mm-hmm. And I was actually talking to Dane the other day, and he was like, I'm so excited that you decided to do that, because the same voices that I used in book 1, I carried into book 2 and book 3. So you really feel like it's the same character, like throughout the entire, yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Have a lot of Harlow James through the summer.
I know. I'm so excited.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you. I know. I saw Angelina narrate some of them live too, and I had like tears in my eyes at one point.
I love her.
Oh, it was so good. She gave me goosebumps on the prologue for the book that I'm doing, that I'm listening to right now. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Well, really quick before we get off, Carly, I wanted to ask you about Paris.
Oh, yes. Oh my
How
goodness.
was the signing?
It was awesome. It was so awesome. I mean, there were so many authors that I had never even heard of before, and certainly many who don't do anything with audio. Mm-hmm. And the most fascinating thing that I found out was that so many Europeans, where English is their second or third language or whatever, they prefer American audiobooks versus translations, because what they said was people aren't doing adaptations, they're doing translations. So, America and American entertainment is such like a global experience, and the humor and sort of the quality of the work that we have just isn't represented elsewhere. And so for them, they found that hearing a translation, just the humor didn't work, the spicy times did not work.
Yeah.
There just aren't really words and ways to express all those things. And so they found like they had to better their English because they wanted to experience the art that way. And so for some of them, their English was spectacular just from listening to audiobooks. And, to find fans that you have in like Bulgaria is just really incredible. People who know like all of your work and came to Paris to want to meet you. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So
cool.
I just was I was so humbled by just the entire experience, because it was my first international experience. And I wasn't sure sort of what that dynamic would bring to it, and it just, once again, sort of reinforced how the work matters to people all over. And you're just constantly shocked by the books that people come to have you sign, or the ones that they're like, and this book, and you're like, oh my God, nobody's brought that book for me to sign. And yet it's something that they love and listen to on repeat. And I cherish these interactions and meeting all of the other narrators that I got to meet. I'd only known two of them prior, Kit Swan and Rob Brinkman, and Robert Hatchett. And so I'd only met them previously once before. And so there was a whole bunch of narrators that I'd never met that were just totally delightful. Yeah.
Meeting readers in real life, okay, or listeners for you, is something that it's like impossible to explain.
No,
like,
I get it.
Feels like, okay. Just to piggyback off of that, because I just did my first signings last year. And so I've done 3 now. And every single time it boggles my mind. Like just the fact that people will like gush over stuff that like I wrote, and they're like, oh my God, I love this book, and da 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 da. And like you get those messages, but like hearing it from somebody in person and being able to like hug them, and being able to have like see their expressions and, hear their excitement and stuff, it's a totally different experience.
No, it was life-changing for me. I think I've
Yeah.
told you this, Tiffany, before when we started to get to know one another, that Book Bonanza was my first signing 2 years ago. And I now do like 6 a year or something like that, because there is nothing better than meeting listeners and authors and talking about audiobooks. And ultimately what they're telling you is how you got them through their lives, like how you bring them entertainment, how you help them through long car trips or a boring commute or a difficult breakup or a divorce or all of these life-changing moments. And I didn't realize how the work mattered in that way. And being at these events just is so humbling, and it just tells me how much the work matters. And it's just, I feel like it's very important to show up for your fans and your listeners for that reason, and to hopefully meet your authors that provide you words to say, but to sort of be a part of the entire community. So I'm addicted to Rare now. I'm like, where else am I going to go?
Yeah. No, it's like an addicting feeling. Like it is,
100%.
it's like a high, but like an emotional one that is just unmatched. I completely understand what you're saying.
Well, where are you going this year, Harlow? What other signings do you think you're going to this year?
The only other two that I am signed up for are both in October. I'm a little crazy committing to both of these, but I am signing at Authors in the Bluegrass in Kentucky, and I am signing at Love in Vegas. So I will be at both of those.
Harlow,
and then
I am going to Authors in the Bluegrass.
Are you?
Okay,
I thought so. Okay,
yes.
Yay! So I'll get to
Vegas. So I'll be in Vegas.
Yay! And you'll be in Vegas, Tiff?
I will.
Yay! So I'll get to hug you both, just not at the same time.
Tiffany, you're not going to Authors in the Bluegrass? It's like in your neighborhood.
It's very close. Well, it is the weekend of my kids' fall break.
Oh, that makes sense.
So we have two
Bad
weekends
timing.
attached.
It's just bad timing. That makes sense.
It is. And we don't even have plans yet for fall break. So if we end up not doing anything, then, I can try to find a ticket and drive up. It's like 4.5 hours away. It's really close. But I didn't want to go ahead and plan on being there and then
I get it.
Go somewhere. So
I've done this event. So Kiki only runs it like every other year. And I did the event the first year, and it was so beautifully run. No pressure on her to repeat the performance, but like the level of authors that were there, and just sort of like the events that she put for an opportunity for everybody to sort of like spend extra time together was so well organized. Because in so many events, it's like you have your setup and everybody is super stressed about their setup. They don't have time to go around and meet people. Like, you're also there to meet your colleagues and to have conversations about the business and make new friends that way, and to network 100%. And so if the event itself doesn't organize, then everybody's going to sort of like fracture off and maybe go to the people that they already know, or do a fan event, or just have quiet time in their hotels. Like, and so I really appreciated that she did so many things to really get all of us chit-chatting, that I feel like I made friends, not just like somebody to say hello to, but like we had real conversations, which was great. So
I've heard nothing but great things about that.
Yeah. So it was a really, 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 really well-run event. So I was thrilled when, to be able to go again. So I'm super excited. So we'll see.
I'm excited too. There's a really great like spectrum of authors coming too. It's not just like all contemporary. There's dark romance, and there's paranormal authors, and there's rom-com, and everything. So I feel like there's something for everyone there. It's the biggest event I'm going to be doing. So you'll
find me. I'll guide you through. It'll be super easy.
Okay. Totally. I'm excited.
Elsie Silver tells me that I met her for the first time at Readers Take Denver, and she was like, I'm terrified. And I was like, you got it. And I brought her on in, and then
I'm
she
not
didn't
worried
need me
about,
anymore.
like, I'm not terrified. I'm just like, I know that it's going to be a lot more people than I've done before. So the only other signing that would be even comparable was the HEA event in Indy I did last year, and it was wonderful. But that was like 300 plus maybe readers. You know, Authors in the Bluegrass has already sold 900 tickets, so you're talking 3 times, you know, the
level.
size.
Amazing.
And then I know Love in Vegas is a big one too. So, but that one I can drive to because I live in Southern California, so
Okay.
that one I don't have to fly to.
That's easier for bringing books too.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that because shipping books for Indy last year was a interesting experience. And then I did the Barnes and Noble signing just a couple weekends ago in Ohio. I didn't have to bring books for that because the store ordered books. So that was nice. So I didn't have that component, but figuring out how I'm going to get like all those books to Kentucky, and you know, it's going to be interesting. But my
sometimes authors, they will only do their pre-orders and not have any extra books available. I've seen authors say, I'm not selling any books, just bring your books from home or buy them ahead of time. And
can I tell you what's so
whatever.
Can I tell you what's so fascinating? So Kiki just sent out something for us narrators and said, if you want your authors, if any author, that you can sell anybody at your table. She's opening it up. Not everybody does that for narrators. And I was like, I don't know if I'm organized or prepared to do something like that, but maybe, I don't know. So
the second
well, Carly,
very interesting.
We have to get together so you can sign some copies of Not As Planned, and then readers we will be able to get that. So
absolutely, you got it. Done. Sold.
It's gonna be so much fun. I'm so excited. Next year I am doing Lit in the Low Country in Charleston. So I'm doing that one, and I'm doing the HEA event in Indy again. And then I am signed up for Love in Vegas again because I can drive, you know. I'm like, that's so much.
Means a lot. Yeah. I get it.
So airfare is really expensive, and so are hotels. And my husband insists on going with me, which I love him for because he's my book bitch. He has coined himself as this. Okay. So for my signing last year in Indy, he surprised me. He got a shirt made, and I didn't know that he did this. So before we went down to set up my table, he's like, hold on a second. I got to go to the bathroom. And I was like, really? Like, we're going to be late. Like, we only have a certain amount of time. Like, you need to hurry up. Okay. So he goes into the bathroom and he comes out and he's got on a shirt and it's got my logo on it, you know, and everything. And then on the back, it said Harlow James Book Bitch. So he was at my table the entire time. And all the women loved it, you know, but he's a supportive husband. So, yeah.
Of course. That's wonderful.
But I'm like, bro, I could save half of the airfare if you didn't come with me. But no, I love having him with. He's a good man. But all right, ladies. Well, I'm gonna get off of here and let you guys get some sleep too. It's 6:30, but I'm a early to bedder. So
yeah, you teach in school.
I know.
Yeah, you super early, I'm sure. Well, thank you guys so much. This was wonderful.
Yes,
and
you.
Happy release day.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited. Thank you again,
CJ. In October. Authors in the Bluegrass is in October. Yeah.
Yes. Author in the Bluegrass is in October. All right. Thank you so much, both of you. I appreciate you.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Good
night.
Good night.
Good night.